forged on the gridiron in September. Perfected in the magic of March. For the fans who love the crunch of the pads, prefer a dunk, and expect nothing but the best. It's Bigger 10. Here's Steve Dace.
Welcome. It is Madness Eve, although with the play-in games, the madness is already 2 days old. By the time you watch this week's episode of Bigger 10, I am Steve Dace with my never partner, always co-host, the one and only Aaron McIntyre. Good to see you again, brother. How are you?
Victorious.
Indeed, you are. Yes, you are. And
Been waiting forever to say that.
Yes. In fact, you know what? Without further ado, let's just get right into it with our Big 5 March Madness edition here on Bigger 10. And hey, man, I mean, you're dressed to the nines. You're representing as you should, because the University of Iowa is officially, at least for the year 2022, Aaron. And by the way, I love the throwback cursive Iowa unis. I like it when Illinois wears those. Sparty does too, because it reminds me of the 80s when I grew up, right? But there you see, it's not just the men, by the way, but also the women. The University of Iowa, they are the basketball capital of the Big Ten, winning both the Big Ten men's basketball tournament and women's basketball tournament in the same season. So let me just get out of the way here and let the born and bred Hawkeye fan here on the show, the floor is yours, my friend. You may now rock the mic. Go ahead.
You know, your old co-host on this show, John Miller, had a great podcast for Iowa fans, and he talked about this on Twitter as well. You know, he felt like he was 16 again, and I felt like I was 13 again, because I remember distinctly that run Iowa made back in 2006 to win the Big Ten tournament. Now, they were the 2 seed there, and I can't remember how many days and how many games they had to win. But I remember that run. I remember Alex Thompson's shot against Ohio State that basically put them into the lead for good in the Big Ten championship game. But I remember most of the semifinal game against Michigan State. I remember Steve Alford running a set for Greg Bruner, the big center, and having him attempt a three-pointer. But what I remember the most, actually, is watching the semifinal game in the living room, and my mom was making supper in the kitchen, and she was bouncing back and forth between the living room and the supper, and every time making supper in the kitchen, and every time one of the guys would go up for a free throw, she'd say, "Wait, make this one for your mama, make this one for your dad," and just watching this and being on the edge of my seat, like I was for the semifinal and for the final. Just brought back a ton of memories, and just hats off obviously to Iowa, but it was a great tournament all around. I would say, because the Hawkeyes won. If they didn't, it was a terrible tournament, but a lot of fun, and just the intensity that they were able to bring in the final. I don't know how they dug that deep and got there. That's their 4th game in 4 days. Against Purdue, which was playing their 3rd game in 3 days. But that was just an impressive over my dead body effort from the entire team. And so a lot of fun to watch.
Well, I remember that Iowa team well. Bruner, Haluska, Horner. That was the final year of my full-time sports talk radio career, the shot by Northwestern State that stunned us all.
And I've got a story about that as well. I remember that game very, very well. I went and took a nap right after that game and woke up, and I was literally sick. I mean, that game made me sick.
Well, I was in the rare situation in that it might have been the only time I can recall like actively rooting for Iowa, because former Iowa assistant coach Greg Lansing was a good buddy of mine. Michigan was out of it. They weren't going anywhere. So, I kind of wanted to see my buddy. And, you mentioned my old buddy, or still buddy, but my old co-host, John Miller, so I figured, hey, you know what? I want you guys to be happy. Doesn't do anything to me,
Next time you rooted for Iowa was the Rose Bowl back in 2015.
I did that same thing.
So
Same
never
thing.
root for us
Same
again.
thing. Then the guy, Northwestern State guy, hits the shot. Same thing. I'm like, yeah, hey, why you guys had a great year, and why not go out there and win the Rose Bowl? So many of my Iowa fans and friends and family would be happy. And then Christian McCaffrey happened. I think at this point, I don't get any more emails and stuff from Iowa fans trying to lure me in. I think that was kind of the last straw. Y'all realized I'm the kiss of death around here. But phenomenal run for both the men and the women, which brings us now to point number 2. The bracket is out. We've already seen Indiana play in the play-in game, but 9 teams ended up making it into the NCAA tournament, the Big Ten, second year in a row with the most bids, although this year it didn't dominate the top 2 seed lines as it did a year before. Did the committee get it right? Was it right to put Michigan in? Was it right to put Rutgers in? Right to put Indiana in? Those were the 3 bubble teams. It looks to me like Indiana and Wyoming were the last 2 teams to get at-large berths into the field, which makes you wonder if Indiana had not beaten Illinois, would they even be in this, even after beating Michigan, right, in the quarterfinals of the Big Ten tournament? But did the committee get it right with all 9 teams making it?
This is probably the hardest year maybe it's been to be on that committee. And part of me thinks, if they're just going off the net, there's some degree of consistency there. But didn't you put out some stat about non-top 45 net, or was that RPI teams not making the tournament this year? 2 different stats.
Yeah. Number 1, this is the 5th season of the net.
Yep.
Only 1 power conference team with a top 35 net who was postseason eligible
35.
did not get an at-large berth, and that was NC State. I want to say they were like 31 or 33 the first year.
Yeah.
But the other thing you're pointing out is in the history of the NCAA selection committee's metrics, previously RPI and now the net, the highest rating any team had ever gotten with an at-large to get an at-large berth. New Mexico one year was 70th in the RPI and got an at-large berth. It just so happened to be a year that their AD was on the selection committee. Okay. Rutgers has actually surpassed that now. Rutgers has the highest analytical rating in the history of the selection committee. They've been doing this since 93 to get an at-large berth. So Rutgers actually exceeded that New Mexico infamy.
I'm okay with that.
And I think they're the most deserving of the 3 between them, Michigan, Indiana.
Yeah, but I mean the way Indiana was playing, kind of at least in the tournament and some degree down the stretch in the regular season, I think they deserve to be in as well. But all the games have to count. You can't weigh some differently than others. And so Rutgers, they had those head-scratching losses.
Like Lafayette.
Yeah, which is one of the worst teams in college basketball.
Right. That might be their whole net ranking right there. It's just that one game, frankly.
Yeah. So, but they also had some astounding wins. So, I might have put. It's really tough to. Make
Wake
this
Forest
call.
had one quad 1 win in 23 wins. No way they deserve a bid over Rutgers, in my opinion.
Yeah. So I just in terms of shuffling those 3 teams, I want to say Michigan didn't deserve it more than Rutgers, but then you can make all of these different scenarios, and so I think they did the best that they could. I think they were as consistent as they possibly could. Yes, Rutgers had a low net, but they deserve to be in the tournament as well. So I think they did about as good as they could have done.
On the Michigan side, the Wolverines are the second team this century to be only 3 games over 500 and get an at-large berth. Georgia was the other one. Now, what is this Michigan team and that Georgia team from about 20 years ago? What do they have in common? They both ranked in the top 3 overall in strength of schedule. All right. So, in other words, getting into the NCAA tournament only being 3 games over 500 as an at-large, that is not a recipe for how to get a bid. All right. Because it's also hard to game plan your strength of schedule. UNLV ended up being a lot better than people thought. Michigan played them. Arizona went from unranked to a number 1 seed. They were a lot better, right? It's hard to schedule yourself in the randomness of college basketball into a top 5 strength of schedule, because then you don't know how good your conference may be either,
but
right?
Michigan did that this year.
But Michigan did that unintentionally, and it paid off in them getting a bid. So here's the question then. If we agree that the right volume of teams were in it from our league, if for no other reason than the teams that were left out had really weak cases like Wake Forest, for example, Xavier being one of Joe Lunardi's last 4 out, they lost 8 of their last 10 games. All right. That's how soft the bubble was this year. So then the real question, Aaron, is this. Will the Big Ten do better than 21? So last year, the Big Ten, most teams in the field, most top 2 seeds ever in the history of seeding going back to 1979. One team made it out of the first weekend. Big Ten champion Michigan made it to the Elite Eight. So will the league do better this year when you looked at the pairings? What did you think?
Yes, they will. I'm pretty confident about that. I think Indiana, Purdue, even Michigan maybe, Illinois, Iowa are all capable of making the Sweet 16. We would have said that last year as well. Overall, I remember about a month and a half ago, somebody commented on the channel here and said, you both think that NCAA basketball is down this year because both your teams are trash. No, I'm so happy Iowa just won the Big Ten tournament championship, and your Wolverines are in despite being 3 games above 500. I still think it's a down year in NCAA basketball. So I think the opportunities, if it's going to happen, are probably going to be there a little bit more readily than they were last year. So I think they will. I'm pretty confident that they will do better because with 9 teams, it's hard to do a lot worse than what the Big Ten did last year.
Here's the other reason I think they'll do better. Remember last year, so many of the teams in our league were driven by big men.
Yep.
Guys that can't get their own shot, right? Kofi Coburn, Hunter Dickinson. Your guy who was the National Player of the Year, Luka Garza. This was the dominant theme throughout the league. The league was kind of built like teams from the 80s and the 90s. This year, whether it's Johnny Davis, whether it's Keegan Murray, there's more versatility in terms of who can create offense and get to the rim and control the basketball for their team. So I think that's a reason that the league will do better this year. Although, remember how good Andre Curbelo was last year.
Yep.
So remember the lottery pick Illinois, or the first round pick at Illinois, who was there, whose name I could never pronounce. He gets hurt. Okay. I'm not even going to pronounce it. Yes, I'm not even going to try. Greatness, we'll call him that. He was great. All right. He gets hurt, and you're kind of thinking, boy, they're done. And this Curbelo guy comes out of nowhere and just destroys it for a couple of weeks. And then when Io comes back, so I still remember how to say the first name. When Io comes back, they look like a Final Four team until they didn't, right? Okay. Well, this year, Illinois is, are you ready for this? Illinois is 13-1 in games Andre Curbelo doesn't play.
What?
They have won 1 game this year in which he has gotten more than 20 minutes. 1 game this year in which Andre Curbelo got more than 20 minutes, Illinois won. That's one of the craziest stats of this entire season.
Do they have war for basketball, college basketball?
Maybe we need to start thinking about it. So a couple of weeks ago, I unveiled my one and only bracketology. I've been doing this for decades now to prove how fake bracketology as a thing is. And by the way, props to Reese Davis for lighting up Joe Lenardi live on the air. There was no justification for Duke with a weaker net, fewer quad 1 wins, and a weaker conference being on the 2 seed line and going to Greenville for basically home games, while Tennessee with more quad 1 wins, no bad losses, won the SEC, which was arguably the best league from an analytics standpoint this year, and they shared the regular season title, or finished second in the regular season, won the tournament, and they get shifted to a 3 seed line. And when Reese Davis asked Lenardi to quantify this, he had no answer other than, well, it's my secret formula, which his secret formula is leaks from the NCAA selection committee. All right. So just to show how overrated this process is, every year, 2 weeks before Selection Sunday, before a single conference tournament game is played, I give you my bracket. Here are the numbers of how I did. This year, I got 53 of the 68 teams correct. That's 78% of the field. I got 78% of the field correct before a single conference tournament game was picked. And I only missed 2 of the 37 at-large teams, Aaron. I got 95% of the at-large field correct. All right. Here's the thing. A lot of you that are smart, like with a motor function and an IQ of 110, could do this exact same thing if you just looked at the net, looked at the standings, and projected out records. This is not that hard. This is a fake thing. By the way, bracket matrix, The two most keeps track of how all these bracketologists do, okay? The two most well-known bracketologists in the country, and I think there's like 110 that they keep track of. Joe Lenardi's like 55th. Jerry Palm is 100th. And those are the only two bracketologists that are household names. The ESPN guy's 55th, and the CBS guy who works for the network that has the damn event was 100th. So there you go.
Well done. Yeah, well done.
Without further ado, let's get to our own brackets. Where should we begin? You want to go first? You want me to go
I'm going first.
Okay.
And I swear, you handed me this piece of paper on Monday. We're taping on Wednesday. I glanced at it. It's your bracket because you can't see it online yet until the tournament starts. It's your bracket. I glanced at it. I saw who your national champion was. I did not look at all at the rest of your bracket. Just want to say that right now. I don't know why I feel compelled to say that.
Uh-oh.
Without further ado.
Uh-oh.
Well, let's look at the brackets. We're going in counterclockwise motion, starting at the top left and working our way down, and then to the right, and then up again. Gonzaga in the West, I've got them moving on to the round of 32. Memphis, UConn, Arkansas. The winner of Rutgers and Notre Dame, I think, will beat Alabama. Texas Tech, Michigan State, Duke. And then I have Gonzaga beating Memphis, moving on to the Sweet 16. I've got Arkansas moving on to the Sweet 16. I've got Texas Tech beating either Rutgers or Notre Dame to the Sweet 16. And I've got Michigan State in the upset over Duke, moving on to the Sweet 16.
Tom Izzo ending Mike Krzyzewski's career.
Yes,
nice.
Exactly. Let's see. So for in the Sweet 16, I've got Arkansas upsetting Gonzaga and Texas Tech over Michigan State. In the Elite Eight, I've got Texas Tech over Arkansas. That's the West region.
One of the best sports handicappers I know also has an Arkansas Texas Tech Elite Eight in that region.
Really?
By the way, yeah,
Really?
yeah.
I like the way Tech plays, and I think Arkansas, if they catch fire, then they're a difficult team to beat. Baylor in the East, I've got Baylor, Marquette, Indiana beating St. Mary's, UCLA, Texas, even though I know that's a trendy upset pick, Purdue, San Francisco, and Kentucky moving to the round of 32. I've got Baylor, UCLA, Texas, and Kentucky moving to the Sweet 16. In the Sweet 16, I've got UCLA over Baylor, Kentucky over Texas. And then in the Elite Eight, I've got Kentucky over UCLA in what will be one of the best games of the tournament, in my opinion, if that actually happens.
Mm-hmm.
In the Midwest region, I've got Kansas, San Diego State, Iowa, South Dakota State, LSU, and a pick I now regret. I really wish I would have taken Iowa State now, the more that I've thought about that. Wisconsin over Colgate, Miami, and Auburn to the round of 32. I've got Kansas, Iowa, Wisconsin, and Auburn into the Sweet 16. In the Sweet 16, I've got Auburn over Wisconsin and Kansas over Iowa. In the Elite Eight, I've got Kansas over Auburn. In the South region, I've got Arizona, Seton Hall, Houston, Illinois, Michigan, Tennessee, Ohio State, Villanova into the round of 32. Into the Sweet 16, Arizona, Illinois, Tennessee, and Villanova. In the Sweet 16, I've got Arizona over Illinois and Tennessee over Villanova. In the Elite Eight, I've got Arizona over Tennessee. In my national champion, I have Kentucky, which you can deduce from all of this. Kentucky over Arizona. I think by far and away, Arizona on that right-hand side of the bracket is the best overall team. They're a matchup problem for everybody.
Yep.
I think the same about Kentucky. I think there's going to be more stiff competition on the left side of the bracket, but I think at the end of the day, they're probably still one of the most problematic matchups for anybody in the country. And I've got the tiebreaker at, not that anybody cares, 69, nice, to 64.
We do have a lot of similarities. I mean, it's not a complete facsimile, but we have a lot of similarities. I take my 12 winning tournament bracket picks or pointers and put them to practice. So over the last 5 years, I've correctly picked 8 of the last 10 teams to play for the national championship, which means I've gotten at least one team in the national championship game 5 years in a row. So let's see if we can keep it going. All right, in the West, I like Gonzaga, Memphis. I like UConn. I like Vermont There's a big difference between the two of us.
Yeah.
I like Vermont in a first-round upset against Arkansas. I like Rutgers, who I think will beat Notre Dame. I like them to then turn around and beat Alabama. To me, Alabama is a team.
If you can get in there, especially if it's Rutgers, if you can get in their face and disrupt their shooting.
I think they'll run Notre Dame off the court. But Alabama is so dependent on three-point shooting, and Rutgers, who knows how many points they'll score in a given night. They will guard you all night.
Yep.
Okay. And then I like Michigan State over Davidson. I don't like that as a trendy pick. I just can't see Tom Izzo losing to Foster Lawyer. And then I like Duke. To get to the Sweet 16, I actually think Memphis matches up better with Gonzaga than I do Boise State. But in the end, I think too much firepower for the Zags. I think Connecticut beats Vermont. I like Texas Tech to beat Rutgers, and I like Duke against Michigan State. I think Duke's undervalued. I think Duke and Kentucky both are. These are two teams loaded with NBA prospects that, because of what happened in their conference tournaments and what happened at the end of the season as well for Duke, I think the Duke players have really come underneath the weight of finishing it off for Krzyzewski. But I think the way that they finished the season, no one's talking about them now. I think that fits right into their MO. So like Duke against Texas Tech, who has not done much this year away from home. And then I think that Duke takes on Gonzaga in the Elite Eight. And I think Duke is one team that actually has the athletes to go mano-a-mano with the Zags and gets to the Final Four in Mike Krzyzewski's last year. In the East region, I like Baylor and North Carolina. Indiana, I think, beats St. Mary's to win a second game. I like UCLA. Virginia Tech, slightly over Texas, but I'm leery of that because that just seems like a public dog. That's more of a fate of Texas to me. Their offense with Marcus Carr at the point. I mean, you and I could have told, the Texas group after watching him for 3 years at Minnesota, he is a volume shooter and not a point guard. Okay. They tried to make him a point guard this year. It just didn't really work. I like Purdue. I think they will destroy Yale. I like Murray State and Kentucky. So Murray State finally gets to play Kentucky from their own home state. But into the Sweet 16, I think Kentucky advances along with Purdue. I just think Purdue has too much size for both Yale and Virginia Tech. I like UCLA and Baylor there in the Sweet 16. You and I have the same Elite Eight here. And I have Kentucky. I've got Kentucky beating Purdue and UCLA back-to-back in order to get to the Final Four. So they would have earned it. Over in the Midwest region, I think, to me, this is like the bracket Gonzaga got last year, almost like they were trying to get Kansas to the Final Four. I think Kansas and Creighton advance. You're hearing a lot about Nembhard being out for Creighton. He was out the whole Big East tournament, too. And they played very well without him. So I think they've made their adjustment. So I like Creighton to beat San Diego State there. I like Iowa and South Dakota State as well, just like you do, to pull that upset. Iowa State, I think, beats an LSU team really these two teams are built similarly. Their offenses are trash. Defensively, they'll guard you. I just, with Will Wade getting canned and everything at LSU.
There'll be a lot of Iowa State fans.
And there will be a crap ton of Cyclone fans there in Milwaukee, yes. I think Wisconsin gets by Colgate, but I'll tell you, no point spread in the first round has moved more than that spread has. I mean, the amount of people that have hammered Colgate in that line and bet that number down from like 9 to 5.5, I think was the last I saw. There's all kinds of money on Colgate in that game, but I'll take the Badgers. I'll take Miami against USC. Jim Larinaga, I just think is a better coach, although Andy Enfield is 10-1 ATS in 11 NCAA tournament games. So keep that in mind. And I'll go with Auburn over Jacksonville State to get to the Sweet 16. I like Auburn, Wisconsin, Iowa, and Kansas. And I have the same Elite Eight that you have here as well. I think Kansas beats Auburn to advance to the Final Four. And then finally, in the South region, Arizona, which I think might be the most complete team in the country, against Seton Hall. UAB, who I love. I love the frenetic style. I think it's tough to match up with. Every year, a double-digit seed, or 34 of the last 36, a double-digit seed gets to the Sweet 16. To me, they're the best equipped team to do it. Here's why I didn't pick them. It's this draw. I mean, you got to play maybe the best defensive team in the country in Houston the first game, and then you turn around and go against Kofi Cockburn the second game. I mean, that's tough to ask for a mid-major team. And so, if for example they had gotten Michigan's draw, then I would have picked UAB to get to the Sweet 16. And then I do like Michigan over Colorado State. I think Colorado State's tallest player is about 6'6". huge size advantage there for the Wolverines. I think Tennessee gets by Longwood, even though 1-11-1 in his last 13 NCAA tournament games against the spread is Rick Barnes. So keep that in mind. Ohio State, I think, falls in the first round or in this first game again for the second straight year to Loyola of Chicago. And then I'll go with Villanova. I think Michigan actually matches up very well with Tennessee. Tennessee is a team that relies a lot on three-pointers. That is the hallmark of a Juwan Howard team, is to deny three-point field goal attempts. And Tennessee doesn't score a lot of points. So to me, it's always easier to upset a team like this if you only have to score 65 than if you have to score 80, right? Yeah. So I think, and plus, again, the game's in Indianapolis. So I'm going to take Michigan, and I'll admit, bit of a homer, but also I'll say this. How many 11 seeds have 3 McDonald's All-Americans, a Conference Player of the Year, and an All-American on their roster? Not many. This team has underachieved all year long. So history says one double-digit seed's going to get there, and I think Michigan may have the best draw of all of them. So I'll take Michigan to upset Tennessee and then fall to Villanova, who's been a nemesis in the tournament for Michigan over the last few years. I like Arizona over Illinois, just as you do, and then I have Arizona beating Villanova to get to the Final Four. And then in the Final Four, I also have Kentucky beating Arizona 74-71 to win the national championship. So there you go. Those are our bracket picks. We'll come back and play our weekly game of Would You Rather here in a moment. All right, time to play our weekly game of Would You Rather here on Bigger 10. Aaron, we begin with you. 34 of the last 36 years, as I've said already on the show, at least one double-digit seed has made the Sweet 16. Would you rather bet double-digit seeded Indiana, Michigan, or Rutgers to be the Big Ten's best shot at continuing that trend here in 2022?
I would. Right now, I think Indiana probably has the best path. Although Michigan would be in second and Rutgers in third just because of their offensive limitations. But I would rather bet Indiana at this point. That would probably be my best bet. But watching them last night as we're taping this on Wednesday, that first half against Wyoming was UGLY, you ain't got no alibi. Ugly. They still covered, but it was ugly. This one's for you. Would you rather have your seeding determined prior to the conference tournaments or leave the system as it supposedly is now?
I would leave the system as it is now because I think most of your seeding is determined prior to the conference tournaments. Especially those Sunday games, the committee I don't think is even counting them.
So I think Jamie Pollard, Iowa State athletic director, is on the committee at the moment. He was telling local radio here the other day that Iowa was at a 6 seed if they did not beat Purdue, but they had them at a 5 since they did beat Purdue. I don't buy that at all.
You don't buy that at all?
No.
I mean, I could see them having a couple of brackets ready to go based on events, but, I don't know how. To me, Tennessee was a 3 seed before the SEC tournament began. Then they won the SEC tournament, and they're still a 3 seed. So, I think most of this work is done in order to get it ready for TV before we even get to Saturday, and especially Sunday.
You got to get all those graphics
Absolutely,
together. Are you
man.
going to do that in 20 minutes? No.
68 teams worth of graphics. Yeah. You bet. Yeah, I agree. All right, for you, Illinois and Wisconsin shared the regular season Big Ten title, Aaron, as you know. Would you rather bet the Illini or Badgers to make the Final Four?
Oh, man. Illini, you got to go through Arizona, as I already said. That's a terrible matchup. But I trust Illinois right now a little bit more than I do Wisconsin. I would just say, though, I know what Wisconsin is capable of. I understand that their metrics are not exactly off the charts, but you got to be able to win close games in March. They have the ability to do that. Now, whether or not they actually have the ability against any team they face to keep it close, that's a different conversation. So I guess I just talked myself into Wisconsin since that's maybe a little bit easier of a path than Illinois.
And now you'll throw up in your mouth a little.
Yeah. Final one for you. Would you rather have Coach of the Year or Player of the Year on your team?
I'd rather have Coach of the Year. Because I think it's likely if you're Player of the Year, your team was really good, okay? But can you have an incredible season and your team was, a NCAA bubble team? Sure, absolutely. But if you're Coach of the Year, then absolutely it's true your team was good. You see what I'm saying? I mean, your team was good if you're coach of the year. So I would guess 70, 80% of the time, if you got the player of the year, team was good. Close to 100% of the time, if you have the coach of the year, your team was really good. But that's an interesting question. I appreciated that one. We'll come back with our feedback of the week and this week's Twitter poll right after this. This week's Twitter poll results, we asked you how many Big Ten teams make it to the second weekend of the Sweet 16. 3 is the magic number. 42.7% voted for 3. 27.8% voted for 2. 21.2% for 4. 8.3% said a repeat of last year with just 1. I probably would have voted for 3. What about you?
Me too.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the chances are greater that it's 3 than just 1. Just because what I said, your case, the matchups are a little bit better. The versatility of the players is a little bit better, but it's hard to do worse when you've got 9 teams seated fairly higher. It's hard to do worse than that. So I think it's 3 is a good number.
Concur. Let's get to the feedback of the week. This stat, Iowa, this is only the second time since the existence of the Big Ten Football Conference Championship game that the same school has participated in the Big Ten Football Championship, the Women's Basketball Championship, and the Men's Basketball Championship games in the same academic year. Michigan State did this in 2015-16. So that is some rarefied air for Iowa. Jeff Hassel writes, really upsetting for the Fire Barta crowd. And I just thought, because I've been on the Fire Barta bandwagon for many, many years.
I still am.
And still am, by the way. Yes.
I still am.
But I just thought that was a fair point to make, given that level of achievement, right? If we're going to call him out when he spawns how many lawsuits that the university gets dragged into court over, then give the devil his due when they perform like that, between the lines, right? So that's why I picked that one.
If you listen closely, that's Gary Barta writing another lifetime contract for Kirk Ferentz. No, that's fair, though. It would have been a little easy. There was 3 or 4 years ago, I think it was 2017 or 18, where Iowa basketball had a terrible year. I think that was Luka Garza's freshman year. Missed the tournament, didn't even make the NIT, I don't think. And there were a lot of people calling for Fran McCaffrey's head. What happens in the 3 years? You got 3 first-team All-Americans in a row after not having a first-team All-American since the 50s.
Yeah.
So that's, credit for him for sticking with Fran, but I don't know. I guess I'll just keep the Fire Barta thing to myself for a while. And that statistic, it's only been like 11 years, but of the teams that you would expect to make all 3 of them probably the most popular sports in the conference.
Sure.
Ohio State, Michigan. No, it was Michigan State and Iowa. That's interesting.
Good stuff. All right. Well, that'll do it. Hopefully you're ready to enjoy the games. We'll be back next week here on Bigger Ten with a rundown of how the Big Ten performed. And hopefully we've got some more teams talking about moving on to the second weekend than we did a year ago. Don't forget to like, rate, subscribe, 5-star review, share, follow, etc., whichever applies. However, wherever you access us each and every episode, whether it's right here on YouTube or a podcast version like iTunes, please help us to find more Big Ten sports fans just like you. You can also keep up with us on Twitter at Bigger10 as well. Enjoy the madness. For Aaron McIntyre, I'm Steve Deace. We'll see you right here next week.